ringside at Yankee Stadium where the
Joe tried to the left and right, the head both punches, misses, Jack drops it. So he charges across the ring. He lands a terrific left reverse with body against the roof and takes a terrific right and a knockdown. Josh is now 2-3.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, too. This is Tom Schneider from NinjaTrader, and welcome to the opening range edition for June 9th, 2022. Lots to talk about. Another interesting day in the markets. Just been wild these last few months. Before we get to the charts, we will do a bit of housekeeping. Just want to remind everybody that futures and options trading contains substantial risk, not for every investor. You could potentially lose all or even more than all of your initial investment. So we suggest you use risk capital. What is risk capital? Well, risk capital is money you can afford to lose, doesn't keep you up at night, and doesn't extend your retirement horizon. Just want to make everybody aware that we'll be talking about ideas, but past performance does not necessarily indicate, is not indicative of future results, and that the information provided in this show should not be taken as financial or trading advice, but should be used for educational purposes only. So with that, let's get on to the show. So really interesting day yesterday in a couple of the markets. We'll get to those, but let's start out with a daily chart of the E-mini. So why do we start out with daily chart of the E-mini? We want to get an idea of what our bias is for the trading day. We want to look and see, are we bullish overall? Are we bearish? Is it a long-term bull, long-term bear? Or are we seeing something that we might see some exhaustion? We might see a breakout that might be temporary. We could take advantage of that. So let's look at the daily E-mini. And so what we have here is a daily chart, of course. And a couple of things to note is this triangle that we have identified that Jim's been talking about for a few days, that I've been talking about. It looks like we broke out of that triangle. And again, this is somewhat subjective. We all look at this pattern and we could see different things. You might call it a wedge, a rising wedge, if you connect the highs differently. I like to look at this as a topping area right here. We couldn't break through. We have rising or increasing lows, which is generally bullish. But if we can't get past this resistance area, then the question is, what happens when we come to a critical point? And it looks like with the close down below it yesterday and the continuation today, we might have failed to we might have found direction out of this pattern. So based on that triangle, if we were to use technical analysis techniques, the height of the triangle at the greatest part, we would just extend down from the breakout. So from that breakout, it's about 41.35. The height of the triangle is 135. So that puts me right around 4,000. Nice psychological number. Again, there's no real duration to this, right? This doesn't mean that we'll go there right away, but it is a target where we might expect to find support if we get near that. So we're taking that all into effect as well. We've got the resistance, the 50-day. The MACD is still bullish, but it is getting to a point, and I'll extend this up a little bit better, a little bit bigger, so we can see it better. This MACD difference, which is the difference between these two lines, is approaching zero. The distance between the two is getting narrower. So what that means is there could be this trend that we saw here could be slowing down and in fact stalling or even turning around. So the MACD is somewhat of a lagging indicator though. So it's interesting to note, I think, when it turns down before it crosses zero. RSI, again, not really telling us much. We're kind of right in the middle, 50, kind of sideways, again, to match the sideways motion here. So today, I'm just going to think in the back of my head, I have a couple of targets, right? I have 4,000 here. And then we also have our Fibonacci retracement targets. And these are targets based on the previous down move. So we've drawn this. We haven't had to redraw this yet. 38% was a level that we attained, and we almost got to 50. Didn't quite get it with the high there. Now, what you might do is if we want a shorter term level, I'm going to turn those off because I could always redraw those. That's pretty easy to redraw. Let me just get this point here. I'm going to go and draw another Fibonacci retracement from this uptrend. Okay, so I'm going to say if this trend was up, what's the retracement back into that uptrend if we're short term or even longer term bearish? And I'm just going to draw this here. And we're going to extend this y-axis and bring this up. So 4109 is the 23% retracement level. We're trading past that right now. So a nearer term might be 4052. We'll keep this in the back of our heads when we look at the intraday chart. Just want to give a shout out to Anthony Guarnice, first to chime in. Thank you, Anthony. Also, thanks for joining in. Ashley, Carlos, Tracy, Griffin, Paul M, Jordy, Brian K. It is next. I wonder what is next. And Tim, Marco, and of course, Mom and Dad, Cags. Hi, Tom. Morning, all. Thank you for that comment. For those of you looking for Jim, he is enjoying a well-earned day off, and maybe he'll share what he did when we see him back here on the opening range tomorrow. So hope he's having fun and not logging in and enjoying his time off. So just getting back to this E-mini chart, we're looking at 4052 from the daily chart to bring it over in case there is movement there. We'll bring that back into the daily chart, the intraday chart, I should say. That's from the daily chart. And we could do that same exercise with all the stock indices, right? Same kind of concept. This is the E-mini NASDAQ, RSI, just kind of flapping in the wind right at the middle. MACD starting to turn down, still in bullish territory, but starting to turn down. Can't get past that 50-day. We haven't even traded up to it. That's fine. 23% might be a support level. It was resistance before. That's at 1237. Now I just moved that all around. So we're going to take that off because what I want to show you is what we did with the E-mini. We're going to use the Fibonacci retracements and mark that small uptrend and see how we can retrace back into it. And because it is so small, I'm going to just blow this up right there so we can get into it. So on a shorter term basis, because this is only what, like a 2-week move, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not even. It's not even 2 weeks. We can use this time frame. Actually, maybe it is just 2 weeks right here. We use this low. So this low, 11,500 to 12,960. What is that? That's almost a 500-point move. How far can we retrace back into it? We're past the 23% level. 1242 or 12,402 is going to be a downside target in my mind based on the Fibonacci retracement on the daily. So we'll keep that for the E-mini NASDAQ. I'm just going to write a note going back to the E-mini S&P. We'll use 4052, and we can even just draw those on our daily charts as we get there. Russell, a little bit interesting, a little bit more advanced than the others. It almost got up to a 50% retracement. I'm going to leave this alone. We're not going to do that exercise on the smaller term because we do have a couple areas right here, right? We have 1866 on the Fibonacci retracement. We have 1917 on the top side. So we have a couple of levels on the Russell. What's interesting is the MACD looks very similar. RSI looks very similar. We're hitting resistance at the 50-day moving average. We closed above it, closed back below it. So just because we close above it, we need a little more confirmation of that break before we say we broke the 50. Right now, we're trading under it. So kind of using that as resistance. We'll see what goes on going forward. And I do want to talk about some of the things that happened overnight or the reports that came out in the morning that might be affecting what we're seeing today when we get into the intraday charts. E-mini Dow, somewhat similar, a little more activity above the 50-day, but still currently down below it, traded closed below yesterday, and then pretty much trading all the way under it today. We have the same concept, although I do like this uptrend, so I will get rid of these old Fibonacci numbers and we'll draw some new ones. So I'm going to get my drawing tool, Fibonacci Retracements. We're going to go low to high. Now, why low to high? Because we're retracing, it's directional. And what I mean by that is, if we're looking to see if we're bearish, if we think this is a place where we just can't get through and the market's going to bounce off of that line, then we have to use the previous trend to mark off where this is retracement. How far down is it retracing? And again, we kind of get that idea from the other indices that we've retraced 23% on this shorter time period. So I'm just going to move this and see on the E-mini Dow, 32,311 is my daily target off of that Fibonacci that I can bring into the intraday. We do have the same kind of thing going on with the MACD. It's bullish, but it might be changing. It looks like we're starting to see a turnover of momentum. So we'll keep an eye on that. And again, RSI right almost at 50 exactly. So we're going to just say RSI not helping today. That's fine. It's not all indicators fire at the same time. Moving over to gold, I hope you joined us yesterday for See the Futures. Bobby Iacchino did a great presentation on gold and how he views gold now, as opposed to how gold has been traditionally looked at as an inflation hedge. He thinks it's more of a leader of inflation, an indication of what inflation will do based on, some activity by the Fed, the strength of the dollar, et cetera. So if you can, and maybe Isabella, if you can drop in the chat the link to our events page, and people can navigate to that. So this is gold futures. I digress. Same kind of concept with the RSI and the MACD, bullish, but a little bit stagnant, not turning over as much as equities are, but we could just see this is sideways motion here. It's hard to find a bias here. The only thing I have right here that's bullish is the MACD. And even then, that's not a really strong indication. We have a bearish situation. We're under the 50-day. We've tested it twice and come off of it. That's not bullish. Our RSI is, again, neutral, right? So we have what I look at as one bullish, one bearish, and one neutral. I tend to think that this is a case where you might not have a bias from the daily and let the intraday chart tell us where to go. So let's look at gold. I'm going to perform that same analysis though with the Fibonacci. I think there's enough of a move up to find value. So I'm going to use my pencil, Fibonacci retracements. You're probably getting sick of me doing this, but I think it's a good tool, and I think it's good to practice this tool to see where these levels might go on an intraday basis. So again, because it's so small, I'm just going to move the chart over. Let's move this old text over and bring this up. Let's see, is that too much? Yeah, that's probably too much. There we go. That looks a little better. And so off of this high right here that we experienced last week, we see that we've retraced past the 23. Here's the 38% level, 1844. We found that as a low today. So I might just mark down on gold that I have two levels from the daily chart. On the upside or on the top side, I've got 1857. That's the 23% retracement. And on the downside, I've got 1834 as the bottom side. So that's gold. So we're quickly, kind of using these daily charts to find out interesting levels that we might take over to the intraday. We're about, we're at 6 minutes before the market opens. So the stock market, cash market opens. So I just want to go through a couple more charts. One thing that I have neglected to do is I've neglected to, and this is the E-mini Crude. I do want to find my bar timer. For some reason, it came off. So I'm going to add that back on and apply. So, oh, is that because we're on a daily? That's why. So somehow my daily chart got changed into my 10-minute chart got changed into a daily chart. So we'll see what this is. And that's really interesting because I don't know what that level is. That is a really, this is a really wild rectangle that I had. Interesting. So the gremlins got in and started playing with my charts last night. Let's see where we can get this chart back to what I'm used to. This is crude July, and it's got some, you know what? It has my daily settings. That's what it is. So we're going to do something real quick. We're going to take my gold chart, and this is a nice thing. I love this feature about NinjaTrader. I've just deleted my old crude chart because it looked like it was a daily chart just inserted here. Oh, and that's because we're doing dailies. You know what? I'm overthinking this. Let's do this. Let's right click. This is the feature I like. You could take this chart that I have all set up with my studies, and I can duplicate in a new tab. So what happens is it does come over all the way to the right. I could drag it back on the bottom. I don't know if you could see this, but at the bottom I can see this, and I have a duplicate chart of gold, and all I need to do is double click and go into crude. And I type in CL, I get my crude futures, but what's nice is all the text that I had about gold is gone. So all my markings, all my labels, all of that is gone. I'm back into crude. Here is my daily crude, still bullish, well above the 50, well above the 200. MACD, ever so slightly getting closer together, but nothing really to be saying, oh, we should think about change of direction. No, we've got a target up here. We'll talk about that in a moment. And again, RSI is an overbought situation. Now, overbought situation, again, it can extend. It doesn't have to just peak and come off. It could stay up there. That's fine. If we're in a trending market, that's okay. It's when it comes out that I'm concerned. So let's draw that rectangle I had up there that I got confused where I was for a moment. Sorry about that. But I know it's not a triangle, it's a rectangle, right? I'm just going to draw the rectangle at the top of the high from March and look at this. We'll go to the bottom, the high of yesterday. So there we go. So we couldn't sustain the prices from yesterday. We came off the highs. Market is trying to find a little bit of direction, but overall I'm still bullish, and we're just looking for reasons to go long today. So let's come back to this. Nat gas, another story, right? Yesterday, big reversal day. Look at this, took out it took out the last 2 days in the range, and almost took out the open of 3 days ago. It's very close. So continuation selling today. Where could that be? Well, I see a lot of support around here, right? So we had these closes over here, closes and opens. Let me draw a horizontal line there. So you might think, okay, well, let's look at this right here. That's kind of the area. If we want to look at a range, we might draw a rectangle. I'm just going to draw another horizontal line somewhere around here. We've got these two lows here. So within this area, this is an area of resistance, and then support right here. Can it hold a support? If it doesn't, we've got a target down here at 765. So 765, and we've got something that lower end looks to be about 785. So we've been through, let's just take a quick look at gasoline. I don't think it's changed fundamentally too much. Little bit of a stutter here, maybe a resumption of trend, still very bullish. MACD's bullish, RSI overbought, bullish on gasoline futures. So let's think about that when we look at the intraday. With that, let's take a 30-second break and we'll get right into it.
You deserve full market transparency. You deserve the flexibility to trade on your own schedule. You deserve access to professional futures trading tools. NinjaTrader, because you deserve more. Start trading futures at NinjaTrader.com. Capture the excitement and opportunity of crypto trading in a secure and highly regulated marketplace. Meet cryptocurrency futures. Go long, go short, you decide. Start trading futures at NinjaTrader.com.
Thank you. And we're back for the open. So we're a little bit into the open, 15 seconds. Let's look at the intraday charts. Let's see what happened overnight. I do want to mention that we did have some numbers come out today. We did have some information from the ECB. ECB basically said, okay, there's no hike this month, but they opened it up for a hike next month, 25 basis points. So market reacted to that. We also had unemployment numbers, and those unemployment numbers were not stellar. Those were jobless claims, I should say. So jobless claims came in at 229,000 versus the 210 that we thought was going to happen. Those forecast at 210, we came in at 229, and we were at 202, revised number from last week's 200. So we increased 27,000 from last week. Not good news. That came in at 830. So we might look at what was that, about an hour ago? Right around here, we saw that big number, that big candle dump, and then come back. So market wants to be bullish. This tells me on that news, the market wants to be bullish. Maybe the market thought there were going to be more job losses, and we're coming back in. It's not about exactly what the consensus is, the consensus and beating that consensus. It's also by how much. And if the market thought we were going to have more jobless claims than the consensus, right now it's 27,000 jobless claims different, right? It's 17,000. It's 27,000 from the prior week, but it was 19,000 different from the consensus. But if the market thought it was going to be 30 and it was only 19, then we might see a reaction like we're seeing today. So those are the two numbers that came out. We'll look at what the ECB meant to the dollar index and to Euro futures in a moment. But let's look at the E-mini. Pretty tight trading overnight, kind of waiting for numbers. This number right here is the low of yesterday. So I put on this prior days open, high, low, close study, and what you see here is yesterday was pretty wide, right? Well, pretty wide compared to today so far, but it was 41.62 to about 55 point swing. Today we opened up, traded down to that prior low, couldn't sustain, went up to the close, tested that prior low again. So interesting range bound trading happened overnight. And of course it's somewhat thin, right? Because this is Asia and London trading, not US, but then broke above and went to the pivot point, right? And news was happening then. I mean, the ECB had a number, their number came out right before jobless claims, I think about 45 minutes before. So we extended past the pivot. We didn't quite get there, and now we're coming off. And of course, on the news of the employment numbers, jobless claims, I should say, continuation. So maybe it was a big miss. Maybe people were looking at that forecast number as something that they wanted to hang their hat on, and it came in way worse. And again, way worse is relative. But when you're looking at consistent jobless claim numbers of 200,000 and you go up, you're off by 10%, that might be enough to keep this market down. So what do? We're trading down at S1. We'll see how this buyers are coming in. Let's look at this level right here, previous day's close, as possible resistance. If I think that there might be a reversal here, I will draw that Fibonacci retracement, and we'll look at the top of that move to what this candle could be the bottom. Now, and I generally don't like to put the current candle as part of it, but if we're far away enough, that's fine. So we're going to use this, and we've already kind of retraced past that 23%. So we've gone past yesterday's close. 41.11 could be a target on the upside. 41.18. These are pretty tight. We've got the VWAP right here, so we might want to, buyers want to keep under that VWAP. So we might see that there's a little bit of a resistance there. We're forming a somewhat nice distribution, right? Here's our point of control, which we can extend right there, which is aligning with VWAP just between the 38 and 50. So we'll see what happens there. CCI is negative, but it is coming up. And that CCI is negative just because of this downturn. One candle can't really bring that back up, but if we continue that trend, we're seeing it turn around, and we're, want to see that get above zero to say, okay, well, maybe today on the intraday basis, we're bullish. And here, this is a pretty negative sign as well. I want to see these moving averages get closer together to say, hey, yeah, let's continue this bullish trend. So we'll come back to that. And here is the E-mini NASDAQ. I'm just going to realign my chart a little bit. Somewhat same story, right? Looks like the E-mini trading range bound, and this is also trading at the low, finding support at yesterday's low. This red line is yesterday's low. So we were trading, we tested it several times during the evening, during the morning, and we didn't quite get back up to yesterday's close until the market started to move. We see that it moved up to the pivot, just like the E-mini did, couldn't quite get to the R1, just like the E-mini did, and couldn't. And when the news came in, the market just continued to fall, free fall. And excuse me for that. That shouldn't have happened. We fell right to the S1 level. So looking back at the E-mini, we did get to the S1 level. So interesting that the Russell, not only in shape, but also in targets, looks a lot like the E-mini. So targeted S1, got there, traded a little bit down, and now we're trying to get past yesterday's close, past the point of control, up to the VWAP. These are areas where we might see resistance, right? We traded all the way up to the point of control and came off. So one more idea, again, with the Fibonacci retracements. I want to use that trend, previous downtrend, to see where we could retrace to. And we're right at the 38% level. I'm sorry, we traded up to the 38% level, and now we're trading back down. So interesting, wide wicks, big wicks on both sides. We'll see where the market ends up after the first 10 minutes to see, is there opportunity here? E-mini Dow, kind of the same thing, right? Traded down to the previous day's close, low, traded up to the previous day's close, trading around VWAP, and that's fine early in the day. Not a lot of volume, so that VWAP, is being developed as we trade around it. Traded up to the previous day's close a couple times, tested, third time's a charm, breakthrough, went above the pivot level, didn't quite get to R1, and now we're trading down to S1. So a lot of times what you see is the different indices, they have the same behavior, they have the same shapes, but it doesn't really line up necessarily with these levels. But in this case, not only does it line up with the previous day's values, it also lines up with the pivots, which is really interesting. They're all kind of uniform. And looking at the market analyzer over here, I don't know if you can see this. We can all see that it's red, right? So the market down by about 0.5%, mini NASDAQ almost 0.6%, all kind of behaving the same way. Let's look at the Russell because it's down a little bit more. Might look a little different. So interesting, real interesting here. This point of control is wild. This is just a wild point of control, right? Interesting because in the morning we have trading, looks a little different from all the other indices. Here's the low. We didn't trade down to the low. We did find resistance at the close. And when market did find direction, it did go to the pivot. Didn't really get near close to R1 like the other ones did. and trading well past S1 on the pivot. So structurally the same, right? Range bound, found direction, found a reversal, but hasn't been able to follow suit with the other three indices. So might be interesting to look at the Russell. We have two guidance levels here. We have all day. I might look at this and say, you know what? I think we could continue this downtrend. You know what? This is really wide. We'll come back to that. I have some thoughts about that. Okay, nat gas. Let's look at nat gas. Yesterday, I want to look at yesterday just because it was such a momentous day in going from such range-bound trading down to movement. The number of pivot levels here were, I think it went from like R1 down to S3. So it was a big pivot move day. When you have a big range like that, the pivots today are going to be really wide. So, and again, it's because this range here from the top to the bottom of yesterday, it's the same range as the pivot to R2, the pivot to S2, the pivot, the R1 to the S1. So when you have wide trading days the day before, the pivots are going to be wide, and they have a little bit of a different function on a day like today. So when we look at what happened overnight, kind of found this level into the close, and then the market continued to go after a little bit, right? So we'll look at this, and let me just stretch it out a little bit so we can see. So here's yesterday's close, here's yesterday's low. We continued our descent all the way down to S1, and you can imagine extending this S1 line over here, we found support at S1. So we might only have one pivot level in play, but when we find direction after a wide trading day, we're going to use that as support and resistance. So when we found support here twice and we came back up, we're looking at now where is our value area? Pretty nice distribution. The point of control is a little off the middle for my liking, but we see that point of control extends here. When we traded, when we decided to get a little bit of direction, we traded back up to the low of yesterday, traded above it. Yeah, you might say that held as support because we only really closed 1-2 times above it, and then we reversed. And now we're targeting S1. S1 failed as support. We're trading under it. So where could we go? And again, this is where those targets that we might use from the daily could come in handy. I don't think I did it for nat gas. So what we might use is an extension of the Fibonacci trading range. So if I go here, let's see, can we use extensions here? And again, this is my first time using the extensions on NinjaTrader platform. So let's see what happens. I'm going to use the low of the earlier in the day. Yeah, this is great. So what we're doing is we're marking this range here, and then we're extending it below that low. So if we were to mark up the next range of that same distance below, where could it go? So we might use 795 as a target. So let's think about that. That's one thought is maybe this S1 is valid, and if we trade up to it, it fails as resistance, and then we could use a 795 as a stop. So let's do that. We're 15 minutes into the trading the stock cash day. It's 15 minutes before 10 o'clock. We'll see maybe something happens at 10 o'clock. So let's do this. Let's turn on our chart trader, and I'm going to put in a buy stop here. There we go. So what I'm saying is, if it trades up here, I think we'll break the support level here, the S1 level. It's resistance now, and we could target something up here. Now, yesterday, I had a trade on and I targeted one of the pivot levels and I felt so great. And that was while the market was on its way blowing past that pivot level to 3 other ones. So, you could be right about the direction, you could be profitable. It's just how much. Now I wasn't looking at the market when it was executed. So, could it be something that I would have seen real time if I was watching the chart? Possibly. But again, we make a decision, we stick with it. It's our discipline. And unless something really structurally changes, we just kind of say, you know what, that's fine. So I'm going to wait till we get filled before I put in my stop, because we're not in the market. It doesn't matter if it gets down here. And I think that's going to hold as support. I don't want to sell there, right? So we'll come back to that. And feel free to put in your questions, put in your trade ideas, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'd love to see that. Mike Carroll asks, so the fib extension is like a measured move. Yeah, it's similar to that, right? We're measuring a range that the market has experienced before, right? In this case, we used it as, where was it? Natural gas. We measured this move, right? It's directional. It's the downtrend from, where we were yesterday, and then we extended it. That's all we're doing. So I want to know where we might go if we get outside of our bounds today. Okay, if we get outside of the trading range today, where might we go? So to that point, I do want to put on another study that I don't have on this, which is that opening range study. I just want to see what that looks like. So I go to indicators and we'll go to opening range over here, not named after the show. I think it's a similar concept, but opening range, generally first half hour of the market. Some people like an hour. I know we talked about market profile and those concepts. I think his opening range, Peter Stottlemyre, who developed market profile back in the day, liked an hour opening range. It's fine. Opening range indicator here. And I'm going to just take off the label. I think it clutters a little bit. I'm going to use on each tick as a good practice, and then we'll just hit apply, see where it goes. Now, one thing I didn't do was extend, and we're looking at the natural gas market. So it is actually, I didn't change my time either. So we'll come back to that. That's fine. Crude. Now, crude is interesting. We're bullish on crude overall, but today looks like we're trading below yesterday's close. Yesterday's low is way down here. S1 is over here. We've got a pivot here. We're bullish overall. We might have that same idea that if it trades back in the value area, or it trades back up to the pivot, maybe we'll see that this continues the trend. I'm not seeing anything, though, here on the intraday charts that say that, yeah, we should be looking bullish. It's more from the daily. So I'm a little bit leery, only because the moving averages, though I would like to see these come back together. I don't want to see them drifting apart. That tells me the trend is downward. Now, I might rethink my idea. I might say, hey, you know what? These are fairly bearish. Let's see if that bearish trend continues. So what we might do is say, okay, well, if we get up to this value area again, let's sell. Say yes. Now, because I want to be directional, I want to short here, I might put in a stop above in case I get filled, right? So let's do this. Let's put up a stop. I see a lot of congestion over here. We have a lot of time. Maybe it's at the tops. Maybe it's at the VWAP. If we're at the VWAP, though, it's VWAP and point of control are around the same area. So I'm just going to get right in between and just say, you know what, let's put in a buy stop. So if we short, we get up to that level, we short, and we're wrong, we'll get stopped out not too far after. But it might be too late. We might not get that. Now the target on the downside would be S1. So let's think about that if we do get filled, and I'll let you know if we get filled. Gasoline, it's kind of following our trend, right? Where I'm bullish on gasoline from the daily chart. And here we are seeing this incredible run right here. We're hitting R1. We're well above VWAP. We're trading outside of our volume profile. And now, we just got filled on an order. So let's look at this. We are short on crude. So as we see that P&L, looks like crude is in a little bit of a run here. But let's see how it trades up to the stop. It might be one of those things that we were talking about with Jim on Tuesday. You get right up next to the stop, and then it comes off and goes your way. That's what we'd love to see. Gasoline right here, trading past yesterday's high, right? So it was trading around yesterday's high, making today's high greater than yesterday's high. So we're trading up at R1. Is R2 a possibility? Again, this might be something of an opportunity. And let's just look at the gasoline futures daily chart, see if there's any guidance there. And I'm looking, and I don't see, we know this for a fact, right? We haven't seen gasoline prices this high in a while. So I'd have to pull a lot of data in to get where we were before. So, the daily chart isn't going to help me here either. Weekly chart isn't going to help me. So the question is, do we trust this trend? Do you think we can get to R2? Are the factors in the market enough to push this up? I see nothing but bulls on the indicators. I see CCI very strong at 193. I see the moving averages getting farther apart. You can see this candle just, taking off, right? So the thought is, do we get to R2? Very possible we have that as a target. We've already traded from the pivot to R1. So maybe it continues. I think I'm a little bit, I just don't want to jump on that train. I want to see a better area where I might get in and say, yeah, you know what, let's see some struggle before we continue this trend. So you might put in an order at R1 if it trades back down and find some support there. Maybe it'll go to R2. Shorty went long at 4,100, flat 41.05, 2 contracts. Very nice, Jordy. E-mini's coming back around, right? Blowing through that VWAP, traded up to yesterday's close where we found resistance earlier in the day. So market still going to try and get up there. Where could it go? 41.29, possibly. 41.24 might be a little more realistic. That's a 61.8% retracement level on this trend. So I do like to see the CCI turning up. It's if it gets positive, that just might be more fuel to that rocket that's taking off. I do want to see these moving averages get a little bit closer and say, yeah, let's continue this trend. But good on you, Jordy. That's great. Let's look at gold real quick. Oh, I think I was directionally wrong on that crude trade, but it's still time. Just real quick, looking at this, we're touching right up against our stop. My thought is we'll probably get stopped out. Okay, that's fine. VWAP is right there. Point of control is right there. Market wants to get back to point of control, and I kind of, dismiss that. We'll see what happens. Maybe it doesn't get that stop. Maybe we come so close. Here's gold. Gold on a slightly bullish indication, but with the VWAP coming down, the moving average is trending down, and if it crosses below the longer one, that also is bullish. So Gold, gold was sideways, right? We said we don't really have any indication from the daily chart. Let's see what we see in the intraday chart, in the 10-minute chart. Now, you could also look at a 60-minute chart, see if you see something, and look at a 30-minute and boil it down. We don't just have to go to daily or weekly. We could look at higher frames, but I'm going to stick with the 10-minute. And we have two areas that it's really interesting. We traded down to S1. We couldn't close below it. Traded up to the pivot, couldn't close above it. So if I'm in here for the day, if I'm in here for a longer term than just till 10:15, then I might look at these and say, you know what, let's just sell this and let's buy this, right? And if we buy this, I don't really care which one happens first, right? If I think this is going to be a range-bound day, forget the trend right now. It's in a range-bound day, you trend up and then trend down between the two ranges, right? The two not the two ranges, the two boundaries of the range. So I don't really care which one happens first. If the market trades down here, I think S1 will hold as support and then turn around. Now, if I get in down here, I might rethink my target, right? It might not trade back up to the pivot. I might bring it back down to VWAP if I want to be a little more conservative, or I might find an area of congestion around this volume area. The point of control might move down. So there are a lot of things that'll change after I put the order in. And this is why gold, with kind of this ambiguous direction in the daily chart, I think you have to pay a little more attention to the intraday chart and what it's telling you. And maybe we're range bound. I don't really care which direction we go, but if we want to be in gold, this might be a perfect day if we're range bound to take advantage of that bounded range. So this is one where if I do get in a position, though, I'd want to monitor it a little bit closer. Don't abandon it like I did yesterday's nat gas trade. I did want to mention Euro FX. And I don't think I have the previous days or prior days open, high, low, close. So let's just throw that on there. Make sure prior day. And if I did, nope. Let's see if I do. No, I don't. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to take off the open. Again, I don't particularly care for the open. It doesn't matter as much. And we'll look at these three areas. Really nice distribution on this, right? Almost classic. A little bit of some what Jim calls divots, right? In here, that's fine. Here's yesterday's high. Here's yesterday's close. Here's yesterday's low. Kind of coming in around the pivot levels. That's unusual that they line up like that. And not in a bad way or a good way. It's just rare. I should say rare. And we trade around yesterday's close, which is also around the pivot, bring it back up to R1, get it up there, and then we come back down to pivot. We do a little bit of trading down there, and now we're targeting S1 down here. So if you're looking to see what the euro might provide opportunities, you might use S1 as support. You might think that if S1 doesn't hold a support, there's another level, right? Quick trade might be to yesterday's lows. A longer trade might be down to S2. And I've seen it sometimes split the difference of the S1 and S2. Also, you could measure this move and break it into fib levels. So different ways to create targets there. But most people know about yesterday's low, right? So they might have that that might be an important area of support. Most traders, I shouldn't say most, a lot of traders know about the pivots. S1 coming in here might find support as well. You might not get to it. We'll see what happens. JMax says, hi, Tom. Really like your first 30-minute rule, 92%. Any other rules with high percentage success rate? So that's really interesting. Success is an interesting way of putting it. That to me is more of an indication, right? So if we trade above the opening range high, or trade below the opening range low, it's more like odds. It's more like odds are we will keep in that direction. I don't really have anything that is, and again, that's one of those things that when I heard that, somebody told me that, and I said, no way. I have to see the data for myself. And I spent, a nice amount of time pulling in the data for, I think it was 4 different indices. So it was using not just 4 index futures to do this, although I probably could have done that, but I wanted to see that on as many instruments as I could. So I was able to pull in the historical daily data for, let's say, I believe it was the Dow was easy, the S&P 500, the Russell, and probably the NASDAQ. So we're talking, couple thousand securities over a 2-year time period. And I came up with those numbers, and I tweaked the numbers as well as in terms of how many minutes after the open that I want to use that opening range. So it's one of those things where I haven't seen anything that has that consistent definition be that high. I will say with the pivots though, I don't know percentage. I think it's a much bigger job to figure out what that percentage would be on hitting pivots. I do know that when there are major news events, the pivots are, I won't say magical, but they are something that is really amazing when they blow through 4 or 5 pivot levels and then just hang out at the last one, the extreme one. And we kind of saw that in natural gas yesterday, right? When natural gas was just falling over, it went right down to S3 and hung out there the rest of the day. So I don't have percentages like that, but it's one of those things when there's something that moves the market, those pivots act as magnets almost on the extremes. So something to bite into. Larry Shepard, can you talk about when to roll over contracts? New MES is 9/22 expiry. That's a great question. I follow what the software tells me. When I log in, it says, these are about to roll over. Do you want to use the new symbols? I generally just say yes. I have not gotten into when to roll it over in the sense that in previous lifetimes, the previous jobs, I've been all over that, right? How to roll over and how to treat the data when it rolls over. I think NinjaTrader makes it very easy for you to follow exactly what the exchange is doing in terms of rolling over, and what most, it's kind of like what's the best practice. I think it's baked in. So, is it with activity? Is it with expiration? I think activity is probably the one that makes most sense because, that's the most active. That's where you're going to see the most volatility. So, if that's what you're asking, I would go with activity. But other than that, I would probably need a little more context. So I hope that helps, Larry. Let me look over. We got filled on a couple of trades. Let's look at crude first of all. We're out of our trade. We got stopped out. That's fine. We shorted. We shorted and we got stopped out right around VWAP. That's fine. I'm happy with that. Natural gas. We're in it. We're in it. So we are. What do we have here? We have a long in natural gas. So now we want to put up a stop. We want to put up our target on the upside. And looking at this, point of control seems like a magnet. That's right here. I do see, what is this? This is just some line that I put in there. Great. That's probably from earlier in the chart. I do see a lot of resistance up here, right? So that was earlier in the morning. Maybe we want to split the difference. That and that's the top of the value area. And we'll just use that top right there, and we'll put in a target. Now we have to protect ourselves. I think it's probably safe just to use that opening range low. Give us a little wiggle room. and we'll do a sell stop there. So now we're protected on the downside. We have a nice target up here, and we'll see what happens. That's nat gas. We'll visit that in the afternoon. Now we have another position that was going okay. This is the range bound one. This is the gold trade. So look what happened. We were kind of kind of on the lower end of that range, and now we're long. We're long here. I've got my target up here. I'm going to keep that target. I said we were range bound, right? It looks like we're range bound. So if I think we're range bound, we're going to keep that on. And then the question is, where do I think I should get stopped out if the market goes against me? I like this icicle wick, as Jim calls it, right here. We're just going to put in a stop limit there, sell stop, if you will. And so now I've protected myself and I've got a target. One thing to remember, if you hit either of them, if I get my stopped out, if I'm stopped out here, if I hit my target up here, then I just want to be sure to clear my orders. Okay. We're about 6 minutes into the next 10-minute candle. We've got some things to look at. Lessons learned. I think, it's okay to be directionally wrong right here. I thought this was going to continue, but what did I say? On the daily chart, I am bullish. So I kind of went against that. I was wrong. I put in a pretty safe stop there. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not getting every trade to be a winner. We have to just move it on. Let's look at the next ones, right? Natural gas. I think we were somewhat valid in saying support one will hold, and then we'll see if we can hit our target or we get stopped out later. Same thing. I do like the range bound trades when there's no direction. There's no direction on the gold chart in my mind. The indicators weren't telling me direction. Could be another sideways day. I was seeing that range. We're in it. We'll see what happens. Coming up, let's look at what is happening later today. In fact, we do have, and I'm looking for my economic calendar. See that? Let me pull that over. This is Econa Day, and Isabella, if you could drop that link in the chat just so people can reference this on their own. It's a good calendar to look at. It is. I bookmark this. I look at this every morning, and today we had jobless claims, and again, nothing good. I mean, we have more jobless claims than forecast. So, how will that affect, how does that, I shouldn't say affect, how does that mesh with the other information that's coming out tomorrow with inflation numbers coming out tomorrow, and then the Fed next week? We're less than 7 days away from a new Fed meeting. So, we'll see how this kind of all meshes. Today, 10:30, natural gas report. So again, we looked at natural gas, kind of fell out of bed yesterday. We'll see how that report affects it. We'll come back in the afternoon and look at that. A lot of bill announcements today, and then Fed balance sheet at 4:30. So some interesting numbers, right? Equities, jobs effects, everything, but equities seem to see it right away. And then, of course, in the energies, we've got the natural gas report. So we'll take a look at those in the afternoon. I do want to remind everybody that we are trading on a simulated account with live data on the NinjaTrader platform. I strongly suggest, if you're new to trading, you can do that too. It really helps to refine your tactics, your strategies, your ideas about the market, and see, well, if I did put in an order here and I did protect myself here and I did take a target here, what would have happened? It tracks it all for you. You can see I've got my simulated account name, Sim 101. That's okay, right? That's fine. Sim 101. We can learn a lot using the simulated account. So poll results, and thank you again for my crack team for putting that together. Poll results. There is no way I'm trading without EMAs, pivot points, Fibonacci retracements. So EMAs were 55%. Pivot points, 31%, and Fibonacci retracements, 13%. Yeah, that's kind of what I see, what I've seen my entire career. Moving averages are the most common indicator that I see on charts that I would see when I was advising for traders and investment portfolio managers and everybody under the sun. Pivot points are the ones that got the most bang for their buck that I saw when I would talk to traders. Traders, when they discovered pivot points, they would usually email me and say, I can't live without this. So I think it's really good to look at the pivots and see how the market trades around them. And then Fibonacci retracements, and just another tool, right? Just another idea of where we can find some levels that might be interesting. So just want to thank everybody for contributing, everybody for joining into the conversation. We hope that it was educational. You learned a lot. I enjoy doing this. I'll be back in the afternoon at bars closing. That's at 3:15 Eastern. We'll review what happened. We actually got filled on a trade here. We'll take a look at that in the afternoon show. And so I will leave you with this. Have a great trading day. Hope to see you in the afternoon. Take care.